grant. This year, the opportunity is open to artists who work in dance, artists, cultural makers, or curators who work in dance, music, theater, including playwriting. Again, this is a virtual session, and some of this information will be recorded, and we will post it. Will be posted on the City Artist webpage, and again, for those of you who are here, can use the chat to enter any comments or questions, and we'll go through them at the end. Again, for your information, it is a 2-hour session, so the first part of the session will focus on the program, on the process. We'll take maybe a 5-minute break just to give some distance from the screen, and also to step outside, maybe even for a little bit with this beautiful sunshine. And then the latter half of the session, I'm going to sort of hone in on the narrative questions and the criteria, and also the work sample. These are, it's a slightly different application. It is not a project-based application, but that's how the information is going to be sort of divided in the next 2 hours, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end, and like I mentioned, we'll refer back to any questions in the chat. Okay. Okay, so what is City Artists about, and what does it support? It supports research, development, and presentation of new, remounted, or in-progress ideas or ventures by Seattle-based artists, cultural makers, curators in very specific disciplines. And I will interject here that it is offered to different disciplines in alternating years. So this year it's performance. Next year it will be for literary, media, film, and visual arts. So it is a slightly, it just changes from year to year. Of course, traditional and interdisciplinary arts are also accepted in either cycles, as long as the artist is or the applicant, I should say, is focused on one of the primary disciplines for that year, for that cycle. And some general information that is important to know about these funds and about these grants is that these funds are tax-based dollars. So you will need to report this as income, and depending on the installments and how you set those up. And you're getting paid, the awardees are getting compensated or paid for services that benefit the Seattle citizens through your opportunities, through your arts and cultural opportunities. As I mentioned, this is a simplified and very different application. It is not a project-based application. So the idea is that you are proposing a project at the end, but not for the application. And I'll talk about that more later. Again, the application is on a Flux online system that does require all applicants to initiate an account with a username and password. There are specific instructions for those of you who have applied or already have an account on Flux, maybe under either a different name or an organizational name. there's specific instructions for that. Again, the application is a simplified, artist-centered application without asking you for a project, a budget, or an outreach plan. So we'll talk about what it is focused on, which is the artist and your development and your practice of you and your practice over time. Also, if awarded, these contracts are 2-year contracts. So, and a lot of that depends on where your venture, what stage of development your venture is. But this program supports all levels of development of the venture. It could be even a seed of an idea. And it also supports emerging, mid-career, and established artists. Any level. Darn, sorry about that. Yeah, any level of professional career, wherever your career is. The other new element with the application is you awarded artists do have the option of completing either a written evaluation or a verbal evaluation. And I can again talk more about that later in the session. So eligibility for city artists is that an applicant, the individual applicant who is applying is in fact a working generative artist, cultural maker, curator, who is researching, developing, and presenting work on a regular basis. Second, it is a requirement for the applicant to be a resident within the city of Seattle city limits, or have what we call permanent long-term workspace within the city limits of Seattle. In filling out your application, we do not accept P.O. box, so you do need to give a street address with a zip code. What I will just add to this in terms of Seattle-based residents and living in the city limits of Seattle is that there are zip codes that actually have Seattle, Washington in their address, but they're actually not in the city limits of Seattle. So that's the reason for that requirement. And also because, as I mentioned earlier, these are tax-based dollars. They're City of Seattle tax-based dollars. So the funding goes back to creatives who are based in Seattle and also who are presenting in Seattle. The applicant must also be at least 18 years of age by the time of the application deadline, or when you submit your application. It is also a part of the eligibility that the applicant not be an enrolled student at any level, be it high school, 2-year, 4-year, or even graduate school. In addition, as an individual applicant, you must also be the originator or the lead of the proposed venture, should you be awarded. And if you, even if you're, applying or proposing a collaborative venture, it's still the lead artist, the applicant is the person for whom this eligibility is focused. And lastly, if the applicant is the head or leads an arts or cultural organization, you must be able to distinguish the work of your organization, your group, from the award or the proposed venture for the award. So it does have to be, it is about supporting and advancing your career as an individual artist, but not for your organization or for your group. There is a distinction, and I'm happy to answer questions about that for individual situations. The funding awards for city artists this year has changed to a single amount. So you don't have to select an amount as before. It's just a one single amount of $8,000 for all selected awardees. Again, there is no project, event, or outreach plan details that are requested in the application. Those details are discussed and sort of, fine-tuned after the award, so that really the awardees are the individuals who will have to dig deep and identify a specific project, partners, dates, and all of those details. But for the application, this is not required. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, it's $8,000, and the contract, again, is for 2 years. And just for everyone's information, it's always clear and important to know what these tax-based dollars will and actually will not fund as you are considering or thinking about, a venture or an idea. These funds will not support head or the lead of an organization with their work. As I mentioned in a previous slide, it does need to be distinguished separately from the work of your organization, group, ensemble. These funds will not pay or cover purchase of equipment, software, or food. However, it will cover rental of equipment. The kinds of services or opportunities that also are not funded through City Artists are fundraisers, benefits, or religious activities or services. So again, there is a public event, public benefit involved in all of our funding programs with the Office of Arts and Culture, and those public events cannot be a fundraiser or be a benefit for any nonprofit entity, regardless of their worthiness, because these, again, are tax-based dollars. So all the award money goes back into covering the costs of your research, development, and presentation.
Irene, there's a question in the comments about whether the $8,000 is then divided by 2 years, or is it $8,000 per year?
It's $8,000 for 2 years, and the installment, you have up to 3 installments. And that is really, you determine how those 3 installments are divided throughout the 2 years or the 1 year. It varies for every applicant, whether they need 2 years or 1 year to.
It's 8,000 total, not
But it's
16,000.
8,000 total. Yes,
Got
it's one amount for 2 years. Thank you. Again, these funds from city artists also will not fund degree granting institutions or government run programs. And again, this is a program that's exclusively for individual artists. And so we want to make sure the funding is not as expansive for individual artists. And so we want to protect that those funds for individuals and the advancement of your career and your practice.
I see a hand up, Irene. Do you want questions now? Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Hi, my name's Arthur. I'm a musician, and I was wondering if you're already part of, say, a music residency within those 2 years, are you allowed to apply for the funding to help support that residency, or is that no?
That is a possibility. If it's as I mentioned, you don't identify a project at the time that you apply. You identify it after, if you've been funded. So at that point, we want to discuss if that residency is directly related to the proposed venture, right? So, and if it is, yes, it is covered, because part of the research can include taking a workshop, participating in a residency, going to a conference, taking a class, pairing up with a mentor or a coach, all of the above apply.
Great,
so
thank
all
you.
of those are covered. Thanks for your question. And then lastly, if the applicant is currently receiving or has an active contract or has already received an award through the office, that may also not be, that cannot be funded. So you have to make sure, if you're not certain about that, or I'm happy to talk to folks individually about those situations, and make sure that it's not a second award and a second contract that's going to be generated and active within our system with city funds. Okay, so in terms of the process and the timeline, it is applications after the deadline. The applications are screened for eligibility and completeness. I mentioned or the session, the slides mention the eligibility in terms of Seattle-based and in the city limits of Seattle. So that is definitely one check that happens, but also just making sure that the application is complete. I will tell you that the online system, Flux, will let you know when you submit if anything is left blank or needs to be filled in, so that you have time to go back and complete the application. And so because of that, you just want to make sure you allow time when you're submitting. If you're 10 minutes to 5, which is the deadline time, you may not be allowing yourself enough time to go back and make any corrections. So eligibility and completeness, those are checked. An independent peer review panel of artists, your peers, local artists, working artists, generative artists who work in performance, are in fact the jurors, the individuals who will be reviewing, assessing, and scoring your application. So these are all working artists who are local and know the working dynamic of artists here in the city of Seattle. And they will be assessing and scoring applications based on a set criteria, which we will go over shortly. Again, all the application and application materials are evaluated by a set review criteria for all the applications. So the score grid is the same, the review criteria is the same. I wanted to mention one thing about the review process, and that because we have pivoted ourselves because of COVID, all of our panels are virtual. And so the process has changed ever so slightly in that all of the applications, the work samples, and all the materials for the application are reviewed independently by each individual review panelist, peer panel panelist, and then come together at the end to really have discussion and dialogue. But initially, all the applications are reviewed and assessed independently. So I want to just go through the timeline for the program. And all of this information, for your information, is in the guidelines. It's also on the website. So if you want more details, the guidelines is probably the best source for all of this information, gives you a lot more detail. The deadline for this year is May the 7th. It's Tuesday, May the 7th at 5 p.m. So I mentioned allowing yourself at least maybe 40 minutes, 30 minutes before the 5 o'clock deadline, so that when you submit your application, if something is showing up that you missed a box, you have time to go back and do that carefully. I would also just recommend the work sample is a pivotal part of the application, and so you do want to spend some time with that work sample, not be hasty, and possibly even tackle that first and get that in there. You do want to come back before you submit and check all of the materials that you've uploaded. So that's another reason for taking some time before you submit, to make sure that all the work samples are accessible, they're visible, and they're at what you had intended to submit. Notification to all the applicants will take place September, October of 2024. So this year, later in the fall, is when the notification letters to all the applicants will be sent. And after notification for those artists who have applied and received an award, the pre-contracting starts in this year. It does not, however, mean that the contracts are active this year. It just means that the pre-contract information is there and ready to go, so that the contracts actually do become effective in 2025. But I do start that early pre-contracting this year, just especially for any proposed public events that happen early in 2025. We want to have those contracts ready to go at the beginning of 2025. Again, As I mentioned, it is a 2-year contract. So depending on the idea, the concept, the project, the projects or the public events can take place anytime between January 2025 all the way through November of 2026. And it's going to vary for every applicant, depending on, as I mentioned, where your venture or your idea is, what stage of development it's in. Okay, so these are some elements that have to do with the contract and contract requirements. As I mentioned, it is a 2-year contract. So you have up to 2 years to research, develop, and present your idea, your concept, your new work. And you do need to be prepared with an idea and event details, be it dates, venues, and all of that, if you are funded. So even though it's not something you have to have for the application doesn't ask you that, you do want to have something, a draft, an idea somewhere. So if you do get funded, you'll have that ready to go when we start the pre-contract and developing all of that language for the contract. Again, if the body of work or the concept is a remounted work, then again, that remounted work must demonstrate significant change from the last time it was presented, or taken to a different stage of presentation or development. So in other words, the City Artists Funds will not pay to repeat a performance, essentially, but it does have to take on significant change. And again, I'm happy to talk with individuals who are in this circumstance, who may be submitting or considering a remounted piece. Also, the contract does require the event between January of 2025 and November of 2026. And again, within the city limits of Seattle. So again, your venue, the selection of your venue does need to be within the city limits of Seattle as well. And again, the compensation is for the $8,000 for 2 years is paid out in 3 installments. And you, as the artist, will determine when those 3 installments happen. It could be 2 installments. It could be 1 installment. That's completely up to you and your needs and your needs for compensation. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, this application is a different application. It is not your standard project-based application where you're defining a project, giving a budget, and telling us what your outreach and PR plan is. This is an application that is focused on you as an artist, as a creative, as a curator, as a cultural maker, and what inspires your work, what your approach is to your work, and how, most importantly, it has developed over time. And And over time doesn't necessarily mean you go back to when you were in college. You can go back to the last 2 projects, maybe the last 3 projects, and talk about how that how your practice has evolved. So I'm gonna just read these questions. There are only 2 narrative questions. There is no wrong answer. It's really about you telling your story about your craft, your approach, your technique, what inspired you, and what kind of prompted you to go from making small scale work to large scale work, working solo to working collaboratively, having a work focused on mental health, whereas now you're moving into the environment. What triggered those interests and those inspirations? So question number 1, discuss your inspiration, influences, and what shaped your last creative idea. Describe how you will learn, research, and or prepare for current or next venture. So again, you're talking about what shaped your last, maybe your last project, and how you pivoted and are moving into maybe another area, or maybe new skill sets, or you're branching out and maybe trying even a new discipline. So whatever that is, you're telling a story. You're telling a story about the evolution of your practice and your craft. Question number 2, share where you see yourself and your practice in the future. What steps will you take to make this happen? So again, this is exclusively looking forward, and it may be not the project that you're working on presently or that you will propose, but maybe the next one. But it could be either one. But you want to, between the 2 questions, show some trajectory, some arc of your work and how it has evolved over time, and what triggered those changes. And again, you're telling a narrative. You're telling a story. So again, just for some artists, just to add a little bit more information, for some artists, there's a through line, and the through line is the technique and the materials are always the same. It's the themes and working solo or group that changes. Or for some, it's the reverse, right? So whatever it is for you, that's what you want to talk about and relay to in your application between these 2 questions. And I know some artists have said that the questions have been refreshing in the sense that it has places them in a position of reflecting on what they have done the last 2 to 3 years and why, versus defining the project or the idea that you will be working on. And I will have some samples of responses at the end for you to just look at and read, just to give you a flavor, right? A sense of, not that it has to be done the exact same way, but it just gives you an idea. And let me check the time. Okay, we're almost at 2. We've got about 15 minutes to 2. So I'm going to go through the review criteria And I just want to reiterate that if you have questions or any comments, either put it in the chat or write it down, and we'll definitely get to that at the end. So 3 criteria are experience and vision. Second, artistic growth and potential. And then the third, it's the body of work or your work sample. And they're each valued at 20 points each. Again, they relate back to the questions. And for experience and vision, share what inspired, influenced, or shaped idea or theme of last venture compared to current work. Describe how you will learn or prepare for next theme or topic. And again, it's about your story and making a compelling story about your practice and your trajectory. Artistic growth and potential. Describe artistic development, training, or work as over time. Like I said, over time in terms of an arc of your work. Indicate what steps will be taken to strengthen abilities or approach, whatever area that might be, even if it's, I think someone earlier mentioned they're participating in a residency, and so that is certainly an area, or a mentor or a coach, working with a master artist, any areas of training, capacity building, professional development, whatever you want to call it. And then lastly, the work sample or the body of work. There are very specific parameters for the work sample and what you can submit and how you submit it, how you prepare that work sample, because there. Let me just read the description. Demonstrates work that reflects resume, narrative responses, craft, or next path. Again, everything that you have discussed in the narrative questions, you're submitting a resume. The work sample is really demonstrating or reflecting all of that. But obviously, in a very limited number of work samples. So you want to be selective about those samples, and you definitely want to read the parameters for those work samples, be it images, audio, video, or literary written word. Again,
Irene?
Yes.
Oh, it's Tina here. Just wanted to mention that Max put something in the question in the chat about if they're part of a 2-person artist collaboration that creates work together. This application is designed to empower just the individual applying, right? As opposed to funding a group.
Correct. And I can say a little bit about one way that might be approached and still be eligible for city artists. And that would be if, let's say, the artist is, the applicant is a choreographer or a composer, and is embarking or has already embarked on putting together a new body of work that is theirs. It's their original work. When completed, it will be presented by the collaborative, right? But for this purpose, it's about the individual applicant. So perhaps some presentation that does not focus on the collective, There's a lot of different ways you can do that, and I'm happy to talk with you about that, or maybe if you want to bring it back up during the Q&A, I can give a little more information about that, or I'm happy to talk with you one-on-one.
Max says, thank you for clarifying. There's another question here that says, from Kristen, is there a word count for narrative portions? And what are the parameters for the format, quantity, and length of work samples?
Okay,
So
yes, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Go for the word count. Is there a word count question?
There is a word count. I don't have it right at the tip of my tongue here, but there is a word count, yes. And it's pretty substantial, but it doesn't go on forever. So you do want to capture, you do want to be certain that you get the main points in the narrative. And I'll talk a little bit more about that with the samples that I'm going to share with you. But yes, there is a limit. And can you refresh me on the second question?
Yeah, and I want to just thank Pamela for throwing in there that the word count is 350. Thanks for looking in there for us.
Okay.
And the other, and then we don't know, is that for each section?
Work sample.
And
right?
Wait, is it 350 word count for each section? Do you know if each section is the same word count?
Yes, it's the same for both. Yes.
Okay. And then, what are the parameters for the format, quantity, and length of work samples?
Yes, that is, I can give you a couple of examples, but really the guidelines have very specific information. The way that it's calculated is for a 5-minute equivalent. Which is not easy to do, but we have come up with an equivalent to 5 minutes, because 5 minutes is the total amount that you have, no matter what you're submitting. So if it's images and video, then it would be 4 images and 2.5 minutes of video. Together, that equals 5 minutes. If it's literary and visual or images, let's say, then again, it's 10 pages of literary and 4 images. And I probably should have started out by telling you what it is per type of work sample first. That would have actually been better. The 5 minutes equivalent for an audio visual is 5 minutes of a clip or an audio piece. It is, if it's only literary, then it's 10 pages, and preferably double spaced, preferably no smaller than 10 font, because the reviewers are reading a lot of material, and it's very hard to read if it's tiny print. And then the images are, if it's just images, then it's 8, a total of 8 images. So if you're submitting a mix of those, that's what the guidelines can tell you. But I like I said, it could be 5 pages of written work and 2.5 minutes of video, or 4 images and 2.5 minutes of video, just so whatever the combination, it's equivalent to 5 minutes. And it doesn't seem like 2.5 minutes is a lot, but it actually is. It's quite a bit of time for either for performance piece. And for that reason, you want to be, very selective of what you pick and why did you pick it? Why did you select that? What about that 2.5 minutes do you want the reviewer to see? The technique, a special technique, certain angle, certain language, description, the narrative, the dialogue, whatever is in that 2.5 minutes that you feel strongly about, that you feel this is some of your best work, then that's what those are the 2.5 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 pages or 20 pages that you want to review and select. And again, it could be of maybe your last work, and there might be something in there, some detail that you specifically want to, kind of hone in. You can do that and describe that in the description. The description is probably the other part of the work sample that is also critical. It is not an opportunity to give more narrative about your work, your craft, or your practice. You're really setting up the work sample, the 2.5 minutes or the 5 minutes for the reviewer. This is the middle of the play. It's pivotal because the character does something, why did you set it up to the middle of the play? What is important about this piece? So that when the reviewer opens up and looks at the piece, they're going to know, okay, I know exactly where I am with this. It's in the middle. This is happening. And it's the dialogue. The dialogue is what the applicant feels really strongly about. So that's just giving one example, but think about the work sample in that way.
Thank you. Here's another question. What's the literary limitation of also submitting a 2.5-minute video to display a technique? So if they're doing a combination of something written and also video. Yeah.
So for that split, it's 5 pages of literary and 2.5 minutes of the video or audio, whichever. I think it's video, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Bria.
Okay, and I think I'm probably over. Oh, I'm actually pretty close. Any other questions? We're close to 2 o'clock, but not quite there. Maybe got 5 minutes or so. Any other questions, or do people just want to take a break and come back at 2:05? Our folks, or do you want to keep going? It's nice to kind of get a break from the screen, so I would say at least 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's 5-minute break.
Perfect. Okay.
Slow break.
See you. Okay.
Yeah, I had a question regarding curating a performance. If you use music from something that's in the public domain, is something like that allowed, or does all music and all material have to be original?
No, you can use, no, it does not have to be only original. No, it does not.
Awesome. Thanks, Irene. I had seen somebody else's hand, but maybe it went down. Anybody else have a question? Leah says thank you.
Is there another one? No?
No, I guess not.
Okay.
Back to you.
All right. Great. Thank you for your questions. What I'd like to do for this last half is I have extracted a couple of samples of narrative responses from awarded artists to give you a sense of not that there's, like I said, there isn't any one way to do this, no correct way, as it were. It's just you telling, your story. But it sometimes helps to see what other artists, how they have responded. And so I wanted to, and it's too, a lot of content to put it in a PowerPoint. I think it would make your, your eyes swirl or something. So I think what I'm going to do is screen share those and give you some time to read through it. And then if you have any questions, and if there aren't any questions, it's fine. I think what I'll do is just move to, I've got a sample from a dance artist, a music artist, and a theater artist, so that you can get a sense of, how some artists have responded to that. And like I said, everybody is unique, has their own approach. So not that this is a template by any means. Okay. And I think I have to close my PowerPoint first. Okay, so now,
There's one more question,
okay,
maybe?
sure.
Geisa?
Oh, hi, how are you?
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. I don't mean to be critical, but I was reading the questions today, and it took me, maybe it's my brain, but it took me a while. I had to write it down and think. It's kind of hard. If you're a literary artist, you write great, and you read that and you go on with your statement. But sometimes for a musician, especially if English is not your first language, the question seems so contorted. It would be nice if it was something more straightforward, if the artist could just talk about, what they do in a sense of, this is my idea, I have worked like this, my strength is this and that. And I think I commented about this before on another meeting. And maybe it's just me because English is not my first language, but the questions seem very confusing. I
Yes,
just want to say that I listened to this 1 hour presentation. I'm still like, okay, what am I gonna do here? And sometimes you let's say I write something that is not very well written, it's not very clear, and it is before you even have access to my actual work, which is, my strength is playing making music, not writing. So it's a little bit iffy for me, I'll be
right,
happy
yeah,
to hear what other opinions are, but this question seemed very.
right. The questions are very, what's called open-ended. They're pretty broad, and it's intended to not focus on the project. It's intended for you to focus on whatever your last body of work was, and what triggered that body of work, or the instrumentation, or who you chose to perform with, or where, and how that changed to maybe the current work that you're doing, or maybe a future work, and what is different about it, and why are you changing it? What is sort of prompting those changes for you, and what you're hoping, sort of a particular outcome in the music, or a particular essence of the music that's different from your last set of compositions. So that in your case, as a musician, composer,
I'm not really a
that's
composer, I'm more a performer and
a
teacher.
performer. Okay. yeah, so, maybe your selection of work, or your selection of collaborators, or where you performed. And were they short pieces or were they longer pieces? Or like I mentioned, the instrumentation of the work. Did you collaborate with a writer? Did you collaborate with a dancer? And what triggered that? Just any elements of your work that have evolved over time, even from your last project to the upcoming one. I think that's what you want to talk about. So but you are right. It's an open-ended question. It's kind of a broad question. But it's also not focused on what you will be doing. Although you can mention it, but the questions aren't asking you to describe in detail what the project is going to be, how much it's going to cost, where you're going to present it. That's a different application. But I'm happy to meet with you, on a phone call, or if you want to schedule that, I'm happy to do that. Or you can send me, a draft of what you, of where you're going with the response. I'm happy to do that too.
And maybe these examples will be helpful coming up now too. You're
Yeah.
going to share now, right,
Yeah,
Irene?
the samples would be very helpful, yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to open that up to anyone that between now and the deadline, I am available to review your drafts and give you some feedback. And also I have, I think, still a number of what are called draft review phone calls. They're appointments that you can make. I think those are filling up fast, but there might be some still left. I also have open phone hours on Wednesdays from 1 to 3. You can just call between 1 and 3. I'm here waiting to answer the phone. No appointment, just, so you have opportunity to get some input, and I'm available.
All right, thank you so much, Irene.
Sure.
There's a
yeah.
question from Nikki.
Okay.
Hi, yes. This is a really quick question. The narratives that you're about to screen share with us, I don't know if you've mentioned it, but is it possible to also have that shared as an email, or is it like matters of privacy?
Well, I had hoped to post these on the website, but honestly, I think time-wise, I don't know if it's realistic for me to do that. I could share it via email to the participants, because I have who are registered. You're all registered, so I've got your email. The applications are, in fact, I'm glad you said that, the applications are public information. So that is not, it's full disclosure, so I can share the narrative from these applications. The applicants, you are the applicants currently, so you also have to be aware of that the applications are open to public disclosure. So how about I figure out how I'm going to distribute these samples, and get back to everyone, since I have all of your emails. Is that fair?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. And also, for anyone that heard me and the poop talk during break, I have a newborn, and so I'm very fixated on those kinds of things right now, but I hope you weren't too disgusted to overhear that conversation.
I didn't hear a thing, but thank you for,
Yeah,
no
I didn't either. I was thinking, okay. Thank you for saying that, though. Okay.
There's another question here, one more from Alana, who says, do the drafts uploaded to the Flux system, do we want the drafts uploaded to the Flux system or sent as attachments? I'm imagining everything is in Flux.
Oh, Actually, the draft reviews are done offline, off of Flux. So if you want to send me the drafts, or you can put it in the application and just tell me I've submitted it. It's in my application, and I can look at it on your application. Sure. Yeah, that's a possibility.
So either sounds like would work.
Yeah, so either is good. Obviously, if I look at it you can send me an email and say, I've got my draft in the application. Can you check it or review it? What's really helpful is if I can have a phone call to give you so that we can talk about it, because I end up crafting a response and I get lots of them. So, but I can look at those on Flux. Yes. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. All done with the questions that are there for now.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so just bear with me here while I do my I'm gonna do this. Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Sorry. Okay.
You see your desktop.
I think, stop, no, I don't want that. I am so sorry. It's this, yes, no. This is why Tina is here today. I am, okay, is this one little click? That's all it takes. I think it's here. Is that correct? No. Okay. I think I do that.
We saw it for a second. I saw that you were going to select the city artist, whatever it was.
Well,
So try once again.
see, it's this document right here. These are the three documents right there. And in the past, I've clicked this and it's opened up the documents, but it's not doing that. Let me try it. Yep. Nope. I am so sorry.
I see it. Oh, no, I think it's just below that. I saw it for a split second.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna try this again. I don't know if I'm making this more convoluted than I need to be. No, I'm not seeing anything. Windows 69. Yeah, I'm completely lost. I don't know. I've always gone here and it has opened up the screen share.
If you want to try emailing it to me, then I can share from my side maybe. And if folks have other questions, they could be putting them in the chat for now.
Thank you.
Let me know when you sent it, Irene, and I see that Nikki had their hand up.
Okay, I just sent it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Nikki, what can I help you with? You have a question, Nikki?
No, no hand up. I'm not sure where you saw that. I'm okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay, no problem, no problem. Well, as you know, I can maybe chat a little bit more about this open-ended question and or questions. 3 or 4 years ago, artists who have applied to City Artists have oh, there we are.
Can you see that one for dance?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, so can people see this? Does it need to be enlarged? Can everybody
Yeah,
see
that's
that?
better.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, I think I'm just gonna give you some time to view this. No, I can't move it. Okay. I was gonna scroll down, sorry. Oh, you can scroll down. Great, okay. Just slowing down on the scrolling, I think. Yes, that was the comment.
Should I keep going?
There's only one per, yeah, I just captured one per page so that it wouldn't overwhelm. But I sent you one for music and then one for theater.
Does anybody want me to move the scroll, or I can't see the chat just now while I'm sharing?
Yeah, I figured about somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, I think, for reviewings.
Should I go back up to the top?
Yeah, maybe we can look at one of the other. Yes, I will be emailing these. So if you'd rather do that, or just, I had thought that maybe just even the first paragraph, just to get a sense of what how other artists responded, because you don't have to read the whole thing, but you get a good sense of different approaches to the question. So maybe let's just look at
A
music.
different one?
Mhm.
Okay.
And let's not worry about reading the whole thing, just get a flavor. You know, it's just getting a flavor, because it's also really hard to read online, I know. So that's good right there. How are people doing? Is that enough time to? I'll give it maybe another minute. Okay. So one comment that I wanted to make, well, here's theater, is just in some of the narrative, sometimes when one starts reading the narrative, you see that the artist is really revisiting the resume all over again and talking about, I presented here, I presented there, and you want to keep that information in the resume. It's in there, and the reviewers are going to look at the resume separately from the narrative. This is a story. This is your narrative about your evolution, you know, what you did last project, what you did in the next project, and what you're hoping to do in the future one. And what's the through line with those bodies of work, and what isn't, and why? That's what you're talking about in the narrative. Certainly you can say, you know, my current body of work that I am building out is this and this and this. But you don't have to say, you don't have to then get into the weeds about what the project is, because that's not what the question's asking you, but you can make reference to it as it pertains to the big picture and the evolution of your work. So I just wanted to make that comment. So I'll give you some time to read the theater response.
Irene, should I stop sharing or?
Is everybody pretty close? I read it myself. I took it
Okay.
upon myself to read it, just as a timer. Is everybody okay with, I will be emailing these out so you can see. Again, there, are there any questions now that you've actually gotten a flavor of the response? Did that give you some structure, a little bit of structure or guidance on how you might respond to these questions? Did that help?
There's a question about, are these examples of people who are actually awarded?
Yes, they are.
Is this grant in music mainly for new composition, or can it be for performance of already written music?
As long as as I said, if it's remounted, if it's already been performed, then it does need to have significant change from the last time it was performed, so that these tax-based dollars will not pay for a repeat performance, in other words. So something new and different is being some new element or elements.
Or written but never performed, or not performed yet.
Yeah. Yeah, because a remounted means, you know, you're taking it to another level. You're taking the work to another level. But if it's, you know, a small adjustment or a small modification, then it really, for all intents and purposes, could be a repeat performance. So so you want to you know, to consider that. And I'm happy, again, I'm available to talk to you on a one-on-one as well.
How
That way you can give me
many,
more detail.
how many $8,000 grants will we be awarding?
Probably somewhere between 25 and maybe 27, and you know, somewhere in there. And I'm gonna say closer to 25. Okay, because in the past, this is the first year that we are actually trying the set amount of 8,000 for all the awards. And in the past, we've had a mix of 2,000, 5,000, and 8,000. So it has really, it was different. And when they're all 8,000, it likely will be fewer. So I'm gonna maybe guesstimate closer to 25 rather than high.
Great.
Mhm.
Folks like the examples. They are helpful. I do agree.
Oh, good. Okay, terrific. Yeah, it does give you a sense, and every applicant is different, how they approach, how they tell their story, but that is the uniqueness. That is actually what you want, because the panelist is going to be instructed to, you know, it's like, read these applications. What stood out? What were you curious about? What do you have questions about? What sounds like something that you'd like to see this artist, you know, delve into this new area of their craft, or this new, you know, collaboration, or whatever it might be, you know, whatever these leaps are, describe those, and what triggered them, you know, because it's different for everybody. I mean, it could be a book, took a trip, you had a personal experience, so many ways that artists, you know, their work is prompted in so many different ways. So, so that's what you want to talk about.
Here's another question. What percentage of applications are successful? Do you have a sense of that?
Successful, successful in terms of are actually reviewed out of the entire
Or
pool
maybe
that's open?
awarded?
Oh, awarded.
Nikki,
Yeah,
do you want to, I don't want to speak for you, but maybe you want to clarify?
who's the person who was asking? Did you say?
Yes,
Nikki?
awarded.
Awarded, yeah, okay.
Awarded. Okay.
Percentage that's actually of the total amount that are folks who apply.
Mhm. So out of say 100 applicants, and this is for this particular cycle, for the performance cycle, again, you know, 25 to 26.
So that's roughly a quarter.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Right. And the difference this year, as I mentioned, is that all the awards are 8,000. So it will change that number significantly, because there aren't no options for 2,000 and 5,000, which really changes the available dollars just ever so slightly. Any other questions?
Does Alana asks, does being a repeat applicant have any weight in the panel?
No, it does not. There's a there's a fresh panel every year, new individuals who sit on the panel. So it's always a whole new perspective, a whole new angle to the narrative that is submitted. And like I said, there's music, dance, and theater, and certainly artists who work in multiple disciplines as well. Those individuals are really great, bring great perspective to the review process. And just as a reminder, the deadline is May the 7th, 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. sharp. It's very hardcore, drop dead date. That's what it is. And then again, just want to remind you that there are, I think, some phone draft review appointments that are still open, but I also have open phone hours on Wednesdays from 1 to 3. And then you can always email me and either one, send me your draft or just tell me that it's in the application, as someone suggested earlier. Either way, I'm pretty flexible. I mean, and that is what I'm focused on right now, is providing guidance and any kind of technical assistance and support. Any
Awesome.
other questions?
I see Nikki typing, but maybe you just want to speak your last questions.
Sorry, it wasn't a question. I was just thanking you for the session because I'll be signing off now. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, any other questions also about the work sample? I can add a few tips about the work sample that I have not talked about. And that is the order of the work samples that you're submitting. If there's a particular, the system has a certain order that it just takes on its own. But if you're submitting, for example, 4 images, and you have a preference in what order they should look at, this first, this second, this third, and this fourth, you can indicate that in the description box, which is always you know, the same with you know, I'm trying to think of the literary samples. If you submit to, you know, which you probably want because it's performance, so it's got to have video or other, but you do want to look at that option when you're submitting the work sample and it asks you about order. You want to utilize that to your preference and to your advantage for your work sample. And again, just remember that the description of the work sample is setting up the reviewer to that 2.5-minute piece or 5-minute piece, and what to look for and why you feel it's a really strong piece of work from your past.
Kaisa asks, does the sample need to be directly related to the upcoming project?
It does not.
Okay.
Alana
asks, do the applications get reviewed in full, narrative and work sample, or do panelists only watch the work sample if they like the narrative?
Every element is reviewed for every applicant.
Thank you.
So, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, David is typing. David, feel free to speak your question if you'd rather. Oh, he says, can you remind us how we set up a one-on-one or schedule a phone hour with you? Oh,
certainly. Okay, the draft review, phone draft review, the you know, 20-minute blocks of time. You go to the City Artist website and go to the guidelines, and it'll have the registration link that you can go to. We're using a new system, and it's interesting, but you can go in there and register. It will tell you if it's already if that time frame is already committed. There are 2 dates, so you can look at both dates and see if there are any openings. If there are not any openings, then I have open phone hours every Wednesday from 1 to 3, or you can email me and just say, you know, can we talk at 1 to 1:30 on such and such a date, and I can do that as well. So either way. Yeah, and I'm glad these samples were helpful, mostly because it is they are open-ended questions, so they're kind of, you know, fuzzy and broad and they're non-specific. You're absolutely right, but that was the intention.
Okay. Looks like nobody else has any questions. Anybody else? That might be it for today, Irene.
All right, sounds great. Well, you know, I got some really great feedback today, and so that is always something that we are very interested and open receiving any feedback, what's worked, what doesn't work, how might we improve on this. So don't hesitate to share that information. Always helpful, as we are tweaking these applications and the processes all the time. And if any of you in the future are interested in being a panelist, please contact me and let me know. Thank you so much for participating, for your questions. And again, I'm available if you have